Hello and welcome to the Robin Pod Weekly, the only, which is powered, of course, by Budget Tyres Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers. Joining me on this Robin Pod is regular Steve Till, and we've got a fantastic interview with Steve Mascord to play you as well. Steve, do you know one of them moments where you're concentrating and then something just goes on your eye line and suddenly it just froze your mind? Well, that's what's just happened to me then.
Yeah, they call it a senior moment, you know, when you're my age, but maybe not so senior at your age.
Yeah, how are you doing, Steve? You okay, mate?
Yeah, not bad, thanks. Had a little bit of a torrid time recently, but back out of it. And I've not been able to go to the matches live, but this weekend I shall be there, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a really fantastic occasion on Saturday afternoon. Made even more special by that remarkable victory over the Wigan Warriors, the World Club champions, no less. Well, Steve, I think we made them look pretty ordinary on Friday night.
Yeah, we did. But you know what? We can make any club look ordinary at the moment. I know we had that hiccup against Catalans, but the rebound has been fantastic. And last Friday, we rebounded in the correct way. We strangled Wigan, didn't we, early on? Not just strangled them, but we attacked them. I think they were expecting a bit of a battle up front, and we swung the ball about and side to side, and it paid off. And I don't think Wigan quite were expecting it. And the way that some of the Wigan players reacted, it wasn't expected either. I think Wigan came to try and shut Mikey Lewis down immediately, and there was a couple of incidents that proved that, you know, when Mikey put a couple of kicks in and was battered to the ground a couple of times. But once that didn't work for Wigan, and once we threw the ball around, we were confident and we looked good.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mikey Lewis and them sort of trying to ruffle his feathers almost, because it had the complete opposite effect, didn't it?
Totally. And that's the sign of a good player, isn't it? You know, I like the way Mikey's built his body up, hasn't he? And he can take those kind of knocks. I don't know if he'd have taken those kind of knocks a couple of years ago, but he can take those kind of knocks now and bounce back and say, right, I'm the boss, you know, and boss the opposition. And that's exactly what he did, you know.
Yeah, and I dare say his reaction would have probably been different a couple of years ago as well, in terms of him being provoked. He takes that provocation on now, doesn't he? And he owns it, and he rams it back down the throat of the people who are giving him it. And most interesting as well, Steve, was the crowd as well responded. I think it seemed to rile the crowd up as well. And there was the noise from the East Stand was deafening, and not just the East Stand. You know, it's a feature of Craven Park now. The East Stand and the North Stand all get involved, and they do make it a real intimidating atmosphere for the opposition side. Yeah,
especially the fact that Wigan were defending the North Stand end in the first half, and you can imagine how they were feeling getting that roar in their ears. You know, especially when. And let's talk about the first try. I've never seen Farrell steamrolled in the way that 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗄 steamrolled him for that first try. And in fact, Farrell, to me, was at fault for 2 Rovers tries. Although if you say he was at fault for that first try, I doubt that he'd agree with me, because his teammates let him down a little bit there. I thought he got isolated. When you've got somebody like 𝗀𝗂𝗋𝗄 coming at you at that speed, it's going to take some fella that's going to stop him, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, all I would say is, though, Steve, his technique was all wrong, wasn't it? I don't know why how he was trying to position himself, but if you notice, 𝗪𝗠𝗪𝗀 just changes the angle of his run just at the last second, and that's what, not just the power and the brawn and the speed he was running at, but that just little change of angle is what I think threw Liam Farrell off. And you know, I put it on social media earlier on in the week. You know, I think it was Sue's best game, and we want to see more of that running, don't we? Because, you know, when he is in full flight, he is unstoppable, and we just want to see more of it.
Yeah, and it'll give him the confidence, you know. I think he might be a confidence player, and if little mistakes happen, then it gets to him. You know, that gives him the confidence to face anybody. And I think that we will benefit from that in the next couple of 2 or 3 weeks, you know, when we've still got hard fixtures, but you know what? I'm not worried about the fixtures. You know, the Cats match, we don't do well in the south of France, but we do well against Wigan and St Helens and Warrington, and we owe Warrington one, don't we? So we've got this week, and then we've got Warrington the next. And from what I've seen of both Saints and Warrington, I'm not worried.
No, and I don't think, Steve, you know, that Catalan away game, I reckon we could be having the same conversation in 10 years' time and probably still saying the same thing about Rovers and Catalan away. It just, for whatever reason, it just don't seem to work. But, I mean, the performance against Wigan was the perfect response, wasn't it? Because you never want to go 2 defeats in a row, of course not. And the fact that we're playing teams in this sort of little mini run we've got going on that we hope to be competing with come on the back end of the season, it's important that we do pick up points when we play them, and we did that against Wigan. And you mentioned that first try for Sue. 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗧, great to see him back in the side as well, wasn't it? Obviously at the expense of 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗀𝗏, but Oliver 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 and Ryan Hall, we've mentioned it before, building up a lovely partnership over on that left wing.
Yeah, the difference between 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏 and 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 is 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏's more of a defensive centre, and so that might hold him back. Now, I like 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏. I like him a lot. I've liked him since we signed him. But 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 adds that extra attacking rapier thrust that Tom doesn't quite have. He's a bigger player by the look of it, and Tom doesn't quite have that. And so, you know, for me, you've got to put 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 in when he's fit and when he's ready for it, you know. And like you say, the link up with Ryan Hall, you know, it's a fantastic one, because he looks after Ryan Hall, and you know, the opposition don't know what to do. You know, do they go for 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏, who's strong and can push them off, you know, or do they hold back, you know? And if they hold back, then 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏's fill the gap anyway. So it's a great kind of centre wing partnership.
Yeah, and the great thing we've got going on there is obviously 𝗬𝗂𝗍𝗂𝗏 over on the right edge. We've got Oliver 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 on the left, and you've got 𝗕𝗂𝗄𝗏𝗏 who's pushing and vying for a spot on the left and right. So it means that 𝗬𝗂𝗏 and 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏 have to be on their mettle every single game because they've got a more than adequate replacement chomping at the bit to get a place in the side. So I do think it's really good that we've got that conundrum, and 𝗁𝗏 Peters will be delighted to have that now, because he knows if something was to happen like it did to 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏, that the replacement is equally as good, although be it different, a different style of play, but it's a more than adequate replacement.
It's what we want. It's what any club wants. You know, Wigan and Saints haven't reached the heights they've reached without having backup. You know, so if one player pulls out, another one comes in who's almost equally as good. And that's everything that 𝗁𝗏 Peters has aimed for since he came to Rovers, to get that kind of backup behind him. And we've let some players go. We've said just can't offer us that killer thrust. Players we've let them go on loan and to other clubs because he wants the best. And right now, I think we've got a fantastic setup in the 3 quarters because of that.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to go slightly off a tangent. I was going to ask you about it later on, Steve, but we might as well talk about it because you said about players being let go and thrust and stuff. George King, I mean, it's reported he's going to be joining Huddersfield Giants come the end of the season. Of course, he's contracted to the end of 2027 at the moment. The rumour is that he doesn't fit within 𝗁𝗏 Peters' 50 or 60 mile radius that he wants players and coaches and staff to live within. George King, are you sad to see him go if the rumours are confirmed?
Of course I am. It's only 2 or 3 years ago that, you know, when George first signed for us, that you'd watch him do 20 minutes and then go off, and suddenly we'd collapse. You know, for the first 20 minutes, whenever King was on the field in those days, we held our own against clubs. But the minute George King was subbed or rested, during the game, we seem to collapse and concede tries. I always said, from the, say, 20th to the 40th to the 60th minute, our defence wasn't as good because those were the times that George King was off. So yeah, a great favourite of mine, and it's sad, but we move forward, and there is that whisper in the background that the family's unsettled. Maybe I don't know whether he actually did make the move to Hull, but they certainly want to go back, and Huddersfield's his hometown, so that's the way it is. It's partly down to him, it's partly down to us, But if he's made that decision, let him go. We've got a bit of a good replacement for him next year already, haven't we? So hopefully we might get another one.
Yeah, I mean, there does look to be some changes in that pack come 2025. And what he would say is, Steve, the club, Willie Peters, they don't tend to get many wrong, do they, in terms of players departing? No. So it's, I think this is one way you put your full trust in the club and Willie Peters in what they're trying to do, and we'll see what happens. But of course, if he doesn't move until the end of the season, just like Ryan Hall, he's got a huge part to play in the run to the end of the season, hasn't he? And although he was 18th man on Friday against Wigan, you can still see him having an important role to play.
Friend of mine said, if he goes early on, we're in a bit of trouble, because if we got a couple of injuries in that forward line, that's where we need the George Kings of this world, and he'll play his heart out for the club. I'm pretty sure he will, as will Ryan Hall, because they know we're on the verge of something. We're 80 minutes from Wembley again, and we're having this tough period of matches, saying, well, Wigan, Saints, Warrington, If we get 6 points out of them, which I'm hoping we will, that's a tough period of games that's gone. I don't think there's any. I tried to analyse it earlier. I don't think there's any other club get a run of matches where the opposition's as strong in 4 weeks. You know what I mean? You'll see Wigan will maybe I think they play Catalans, but then they've got a less strong club in their next 3 or 4 games. And this run of matches we're having, we get through this and we can look to the future and say, we're not frightened of anybody. Not that we're frightened of anybody anyway,
No, without doubt. Great to see so many people tuning in over on YouTube. Mark Brady, Mike Morton, great to see you. Craig Eskerett, he's put, I thought it was the best atmosphere this season so far. Of course, he's talking about the atmosphere on Friday night. You can thank 𝗀𝗡𝗄𝗄's late hit for that. Of course, he didn't sound for the Robins, but he made a major contribution for the Robins on Friday with that late hit on Mikey Lewis, which seems to spare the crowd and Mikey on. Dean Longley, he's put, he was pleased with the way our forwards dominated. That's what really pleased him. Bazza, he's talking about St Helens. We'll come on to that later on in the Robin Pod. If you go back to the game, Steve, 29th minute, for me, this try of the season so far. 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗄𝗧 effort, pace, power, brawn, skill, that link up with Evalds. That was the best of 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗄𝗧. For me, it was probably the best of Hull Kingston Rovers, really. Just the way that they sliced through the Wigan defence and then came up with a fantastic try. What do you reckon, Steve?
I reckon that pass from Niall Evalds to 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗧, that final pass after 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗧 had broke past it to Evalds, that was timed perfectly, because I don't think Evalds had got to the line, but he was aware, he knew what was going. I think it was Marshall coming up on him, and he released that pass. The run, the power, those are the type of things I was brought up on, in watching Rovers years ago, and we've got it back again. The Phil Lowe type run, that kind of thing. And it was outstanding, a great try. Again, Farrell, did he miss the tackle? Pretty sure he did. And once that gap was there and 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗧 went through it, we've had a lot of people having a lot to say about 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗧 when he was at fullback and questioning how good he was. We saw how good he was last Friday. That was the real 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀.
Yeah, and what's becoming a feature of the side as well, Steve, and we saw it. I mean, we've seen it a number of occasions already this season. I mean, look at 𝗀𝗽𝗲𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁𝗁 try when he sliced through the middle and went on his own. The Robins, they're not afraid to have a run at him, are they, in the middle? And if they see a slow ruck speed or a gap in the defence, we've got strike players who can take advantage of that, and we've done it already. And 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗄𝗏's try is just another example of that willingness to go at the opposition and go at them with pace, go at them with speed, and go at with them with skill as well. And it's that's the kind of rugby league that we all want to see in it. Not just Rovers fans, supporters of rugby league in general want to see that. And we're so lucky and blessed that we've got players who are able to execute these plays.
That was our problem, even in the recent past. We didn't have that speed. Now we've got it. It's watch out, everybody, because the Robins are flying. We missed that bit of speed for the last 3 or 4 years. We never had that forward speed. We had a bit of speed on the wings and what have you, but we didn't have that, like you say, the middle speed that we need, that other top clubs have got. And I'm all for it. I think it's great, and let's have more of it.
Yeah, I mean,
18 scored like that.
18-0 at half time, Steve. And what you'd have to say is, I mean, if you if you've watched the game back or you watched it live on TV, you'd almost think the lead was built on Wigan being rubbish, and it wasn't. It was built on Rovers not letting Wigan play. It was a fantastic 40 minutes of rugby league for the Robins.
I think 𝗂𝗲𝗄𝗏 said that. It's a poor Wigan team, poor Wigan performance. Sodom, yeah. Let them all think that. Let us remain under the radar. Let 𝗂𝗲𝗄𝗏 make those stupid comments, because it was a stupid comment. They're not giving Rovers the praise that they deserve, and let them do that, because while they're saying that, it's affecting other people. We know what we're seeing, and I'll tell you, I'm seeing a very, very, very good Rovers team that could turn into a great Rovers team. Yeah,
and Hull Kingston Rovers, they conceded the first try of the game on the 52nd minute, but reality, Steve, that Wigan never really looked like threatening Rovers.
No, not at all. I've never seen us dominate a Wigan team like we dominated them. I'll tell you who livened them up, the hooker. What do you call him? Their hooker came on. They swapped the hooker, didn't they?
𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏.
𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏, that's it. Sorry, brain. 𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏𝗏 came on and he livened them up a bit. But when he did liven them up, we were ready for it. That was the Wigan we were expecting from the off. And, they've had to defend. So that's tired them out. 𝗂𝗏𝗄𝗏's come on, but he never quite got the backup that he needed, because we tired the rest of them out. We saw 𝗀𝗽𝗆𝗆 make a couple of breaks. We covered them. There was one incident. I think Marshall was set loose and he had Farrell on his inside. Now, in the past, over the past 2 or 3 years, you've seen that move where Marshall goes down the wing and who's always following up Farrell, which, if you remember the second game we had at home last year against Wigan, that produced that match-winning try for them. But this time, there was a bit of panic rugby in the way Wigan were passing the ball at that stage, and the ball from Marshall went behind Farrell. We rescued the situation from then on. We didn't look like losing,
Yeah, further tries from the Robins, Ryan Hall and 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏. Ryan Hall, he gave. I'll tell you what, if I was, I don't know, the producer at Sky Sports Rugby League, I'd be signing Ryan Hall up as a pundit, because he's so great in his explanation and his explaining his thought process and why he does things. And he gave a great explanation about how he set himself up to score the try, what he did against Wigan, about how he looks at where the defending players coming from, how he uses his body to go into the player to create that opportunity for him to score a try. Of course, he's edging closer to that record, isn't he? He's chasing down his good friend, so it looks like he's going to do it in Robins' colours.
Yeah, I'm hoping he does it. I'm hoping he does it on Saturday, or equals it on Saturday and then beats it against Warrington. because there's another fella in the background that's catching the pair of them, unfortunately. But yeah, that explanation where he turns into the player, it's teaching kids as well. Any kid watching that will be thinking, blimey, I'll do that. Not go for the acrobatic, you know, double tipple tail, put the ball down, you know, knocking the corner post down. But yeah, he's doing that's the right move. Somebody coming at you, you hit them, you know, and let them try and take you over the touchline. Well, somebody of Ryan Hall's size, that takes some doing, doesn't it? And yeah, it was a really, really good try to see.
Yeah, there was no stopping Ryan Hall. Well, there was definitely no stopping 𝗀𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏, wasn't it? I mean, he put the afterburners on, didn't he, to come away with that try. I mean, running near the full length of the field. He looked like he was just about to get caught, and then he seemed to get that extra yard of pace, didn't he, to go over the whitewash. Of course, capitalising on Wigan. I mean, they didn't play to the whistle, did they? They sort of just stopped, and 𝗀𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏 took full advantage. Any kids who are listening, you know, that's why you play to the whistle. You don't wait for the whistle. You keep going until you're told to come back. 𝗀𝗄𝗏𝗄𝗏 did that perfectly. And, I mean, he must have got an extra yard of pace. I think it might have been the East stand pushing him on almost. You know, it'd have been great if it was to catch the train, wouldn't it? If he'd have beat that train and had been getting some train tickets to London if he was doing that at that time. But fantastic score from 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝗏.
Yeah, I was a bit worried when he stopped, you know, before he started the run. I'm thinking, that ball's gone backwards. Run. You know, you could see the ball had gone backwards, and everybody stopped. Wigan stopped and 𝗀𝗏𝗏𝗏 stopped. But then once he hit the burners, that was it. It was good night Vienna, wasn't it? You know, do you see who the player was, though, that got nearest to him? I thought it was Marshall that was chasing him down. It was Farrell.
Yeah.
Farrell was the nearest Wigan player, which was, yeah. But no. And there's nothing better. I think Ryan Hall did it against Huddersfield last week. Got an intercept on the East stand side and went about 90 yards. And this happened again. And you're doing that down the East stand. What a great feeling that must be, mustn't it? If you're a player, you know. Absolutely
electric. An all-round great performance from the Robins, wasn't it, Steve? And like we've already said, the perfect tonic after the defeat to Catalan.
Yeah, and you know, you see the press giving players points, don't you? Marks. I'd have given them all. The minimum I would have given would have been 8 out of 10, and yeah, perhaps a couple 9. We've got an 8 out of 10 team. Now, when was the last time we could say that? You know, that on at our best, we've got a minimum 8 out of 10 team. Every one of those players deserved whatever they got, and yeah, and the fans loved it, and it's a great time to be a Rovers fan, isn't it?
Yeah, and this is why, as well, Steve. I mean, obviously, total dominance really against Wigan, but you can't always just look at the stats, because completion rate, Rovers 84%, Wigan 87%. Wigan had more completed sets, they had more carries, they made more meters, they had more ball running meters, more post-contact meters, they made more tackle busts, they had more kick return meters, they had more play of the balls in the opposition 20 meters. They played the ball 27 times in our 20. We played it only 12.
Can I just talk?
We had more missed tackles, Steve. 42 missed tackles to their 31.
Can I talk about the stat that matters? 26-10.
Exactly, and that's why stats are only part of the story, aren't they?
Yeah, and I'm sure they do matter, but you know, you've got to analyse how those stats came about. And Wigan didn't look like scoring more than 2 tries. In fact, I thought we'd keep them to 1, but you know, the stats, there's statistics and what I can't remember the saying, but you can go with statistics. But the bottom line is, what's the final score in the end? What's the outcome? And the outcome was Rovers winning 26-10.
Yeah, and Barry Bratton sums it up: by far the best performance of the season, if not for a long time. Proof is in the pudding is whether they can follow that up on Saturday against St Helens when we welcome the Saints to Craven Park. We'll discuss that in just a short while. Before we do that, then, I caught with Steve Mascord to hear about his new venture, rugbyleague.com. Hi, Steve. Welcome to this week's Robin Pod Weekly. Making your debut on the Robin Pod.
Yeah, and if I don't, I guess I'm under pressure. I won't be invited back, so I'll try to behave, try not to drop too many f-bombs unless you want me to, and try to answer your questions as well as good as I can, so I get invited back.
Yeah. For people who aren't familiar with your work at the moment, Steve, I mean, I put a little description of you here. I put Rugby League's rock and roll reporter. What do you reckon?
Or either that or rock and roll's rugby league reporter. Yeah, mate. I never earned. I could probably buy a round of drinks with the amount of money I earned over the years as a rock and roll reporter. But I used to send stories to Kerrang when I was a kid from Australia, and I went on tour with Motley Crue for a couple of days once and stuff like that. Got shown around a stage by Gene Simmons, but it wasn't almost famous. I was nowhere near famous as a rock and roll writer, but I still like to dabble in it because it's kind of part of what I'm into. So the rugby league thing was, believe it or not, hard to believe these days, but rugby league was a lot more stable when I had to make a choice back in my early 20s. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah, Steve, I mean, some people might be familiar with you, but you're across so many things in rugby league, aren't you? From merchandise to reporting, and your latest venture, which is rugbyleague.com. We'll talk a little bit about that very shortly. But I mean, you are so busy, aren't you? What kind of things are you involved with?
Well, John, the main thing that kind of made me busy was that I moved here in the start of 2018, and I kind of tossed my career away. So I, my wife is Irish. She wanted to live closer to her family in Ireland, and I kind of thought, well, I think I lived through the best era of being a rugby league reporter when we had, we flew around everywhere, stayed in nice hotels, mini bars, and good access to players, and so I thought, well, now's kind of the time to make the jump and just start again. So when I got here, there was a whole heap of things I wanted to have a go at, and I just I couldn't wait to wake up my first day here in 2018 and start working on them all. And I just learned so much about, I guess when you've got a job that's in something that you love, I didn't realize how fortunate I was. Like, things are taken care of for you, and you're being paid by someone else, and someone else is taking on the risk of selling your work or making your work profitable. So it's a huge learning curve over 6 years to be responsible for monetizing yourself. And the things that I had to go at, I wrote a book. I wrote a couple of books, and I had a merchandise business and still do, still doing that. There's still a storeroom there, which I go to when I have to. I'm right behind a paywall with John Davidson, and this thing, rugbyleague.com, it actually, and this is the thing I learned a bit from when I moved here and trying to do things yourself, is that you've got to find people who've got similar objectives to you, and they've got to be able to contribute the thing that you can't contribute to the project. And so I first started to do this in 2018 with a platform called Radionomy, which is not around anymore. And it basically allowed people to set up their radio stations, their own radio stations, put in their own music, and you paid a certain amount that covered your rights fee for the music. And I put rugby league podcasts in. This is back in 2018. Cut them all up because they had to be cut up to a certain length. They couldn't be longer than a certain length. And it was super time consuming, but I was kind of like starting again and looking for my feet and having a go at anything that interested me. So I did it, and we've had rugby league on the weekend, I think, and music, maybe the other way around because we didn't have anything live. Anyway, Radionomy went away. I moved on to other things. And Paul Fairs is a guy I know for 25 years. He's a advertising guy, sales guy, and he's got perimeter advertising at 9 out of the 12 Super League clubs. And he used to be like a proper pirate DJ, like in the North Sea, like that movie, The Boat That Rocked. Yeah. He is like Bill Nighy. In fact, some people out there have met him. and he's like Bill Nighy. He talks like Bill Nighy. He looks like Bill Nighy. He gets mistaken for Bill Nighy. And so I kind of thought to try to interest Paul in different things I was doing, and I wasn't having any luck. But the radio thing was something I don't know whether he listened to me, forgot I suggested it, then came back to me as if and thought it was his suggestion, or whether it generally was his suggestion. But he said, I'd love to do a rugby league radio station and include the advertising in, the deals I do for the perimeter advertising. So suddenly I was back doing something that I first started doing in 2018. And for the first few months, it was really, I say it was kind of easy because all I was doing was talking about it and getting player IDs, like, hi, I'm 𝗕𝗂𝗃𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗂𝗀, you're listening to rugbyleague.com. Super easy. But now it's actually been going for 2 weeks. It's extremely labor intensive, extremely. If you go away from the computer, you can wake up after sleeping and the schedule could be off. The system is meant for music. It's not meant for talk. So I'm still like still like pulling my hair out, as you can see, pulling my hair out, trying to figure out how it works and trying to get a system. You're almost fighting against the scheduling system because you're putting in long talk shows, and it's built for 3-minute songs. So that's how we got there anyway. Yeah.
So this is, I suppose, the world's first ever dedicated 24-hour rugby league radio station.
Well, actually, there was a guy in Leeds doing a thing called RL Internet Radio a few years ago, and I had meetings with him. Actually, had a meeting in that pub near the Leeds train station with him and maybe Alex Simmons came. Certainly, Phil Kaplan came, and we tried to get everything together to work together then. So he gave up in the end because it is a lot of work. So it is currently the world's only, but in deference to him, I would say it's not the world's first.
Yeah. And there is a whole connection as well with Tony Collins. Is he part of the team?
Yeah, so the situation with Tony, hello, Tony, if you're watching, is that I spoke to Tony. Paul's very keen on Tony to be involved and just to use his podcast. And I spoke to Tony and he said, well, I'm not doing it anymore at the moment. I'm busy with other things. I think he might be out of the country at the moment, to be fair. But he said, I'd like to do some bespoke content for it. But so that excited Paul because Paul was a fan of Tony. So Paul said, we'll put Tony on the front page of the website. Just on the page, it's got all the people who will be doing shows because Tony said he'd like to do his own show. But since we've launched, I've had no more contact with Tony. But luckily enough, there's and I expect he'll get back to me when he's not as busy. But we still have the backlog of his rugby-related programs. So I think on every Thursday we kind of premiere 4 at a time because 4 fits into an hour with the ads and stuff. And by the time we run out, I hope we'll never run out because they're all 10 minutes and they're all super interesting, and we can always use them to fill a gap at the end of an hour. But hopefully, when Tony has time, he'll be able to do some original content for us. But I haven't, in answer to your question, I haven't actually had any contact with Tony in the 3 weeks since we actually kicked off.
Yeah, and it's still obviously in its embryonic stages. But where do you hope rugbyleague.com will go? And as a listener, what can we expect in the future?
That's a nice open question for me to plug, mate. I'll try to make the most of it. So we have broadcast rights, as I understand from Paul, for London Broncos and Catalans Dragons home games. So we've got Jason Costigan over in Europe, who's a well-known NRL commentator with 30, 40 years experience. And he's doing the news at the moment, along with me filling in at times as well. So myself and Costo will have programs, with people ringing in, hopefully interviews. For instance, Nick Pappas, the chairman of Souths. They've just got rid of their coach. Nick Pappas is here in London, so I guess if we were fully set up, I'd be trying to tempt him to come over to my place and have a chat on air. So. The possibilities are endless, and certainly I'm excited about I had quite a lot of sideline experience, touchline reporter, sideline eye experience in Australia. So I'm really excited about the possibility of getting back and doing that with the project that I'm involved in from the bottom up. So so basically you can expect exclusive content like every day with me and Costo, and you can expect at least a couple of games live a week with an hour lead in, an hour post match. I'd like to think that we'd be able to, I grew up in a sort of different environment here where rugby league on the radio was a big deal. The coverage started at midday and it finished at 6, and before I was a reporter, you'd get in your car and the radio would be on, and while you're driving home, you'd be listening to them talking about what happened in the game and what was happening in the dressing rooms and doing interviews and stuff like that. So I know that does happen here, but often the rugby league has to fit around other sports in the schedule here. So we kind of want to bring that real kind of in-depth and forensic coverage to the UK and to the games that we have the rights for. We will be, because of Paul's connections in France. Paul actually spends half his time in France, has a house in northern Spain, and Costo's been living there as well. We'll be doing the England-France test match at the end of June. So basically, I look at like what we're doing now is kind of like, we're putting the undercoat on, where we've, thanks to yourselves and some other great podcasts, we've got some wonderful content. And we look at doing time-sensitive stuff up until Thursday morning when the NRL starts, and then more timeless stuff like Tony Collins when there's matches on. But then we will fill in gaps in that schedule with our own live content. So you can expect things. You can expect it to be like the CNN of rugby league. The CNN of rugby league. That's the aim. Yeah.
And if people listening and watching this now, where is the best place for them to find? Obviously, rugbyleague.com is pretty it's in the title.
People don't believe that. They think it's just a name and that we couldn't possibly have that URL. But Paul has had that URL for decades. And I worked for him 20 years ago writing stories for that URL, and that didn't work for him, and he just put it away. And it was available for sale, but I think, I don't know how much. I think it's worth a lot of money, rugbyleague.com. So that's where you find us. You just go to rugbyleague.com, click on the listen now, launch player, and there we are. So and at the moment we've got news every hour. And we've got rugby league talk constantly already, all around the clock. So it's already up and running.
Yeah, make sure you do give that a check, because there's lots of great content already on there, and of course, Steve, there's plenty more to come, including the Robin Pod, which is on there. So please get on board with that platform, giving people more opportunity to listen to the weekly Robin Pod. Just while you're on, Steve, it'd be great just to get your opinion on Super League, rugby league in general. And it's funny you just mentioned about 𝗧𝗂𝗧𝗏𝗏 being over in this country. Of course, we saw the Lewis Dodd deal sort of unofficially announced. Interestingly, Jason Demetriou has just been sacked as head coach at the Rabbitohs. Lots of names in the frame to take on that role of head coach. I wonder if former South Rabbitohs player, head coach Willie Peters, I wonder if he's a name that could be put into the mix for that one.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. Obviously, Sam Burgess gets mentioned a lot. Michael Maguire, Wayne Bennett. Certainly, Willie's been outstanding this year, and there's no reason why they wouldn't target him. I guess from the point of view of Robins, you would hope that he sticks around, and I think he said he intends to. He's enjoying it. So I guess from the point of view of your listeners, you hope Nick Pappas doesn't ring Willie. So maybe I can go and get Nick drunk, and he can leave Willie alone. But maybe your listeners can donate to our bar bill. But no, I actually did send Nick a text and just said, if you're in town, if you want to catch up. And before I would have offered anyway. I'm not, he's not my buddy, I know him, but I would have offered anyway. But now obviously there's a few kind of journalistic reasons I wouldn't mind having a chat to him as well. But yeah, I think Super League's good at the top level. The top half of the competition this year, maybe a bit more than half, and then there's some stragglers down the bottom. But I love having every game on TV. I'd like to. I enjoyed going the first round. I went to a lot of matches. First round, travelled around. I loved coming up to Hull KR and going to the media day. And I think it's definitely sort of the club that's on the up this year. It was a great win last week. And Willie's a great fella. He's just a straight shooter and a really nice guy. And I think everyone in Australia wishes him well. I'm not sure if Willie has any enemies actually. And in coaching, that's a rare thing.
Yeah, I've heard you on some of the press conferences, his weekly match press conferences. What have you made of the Robin so far in 2024?
I went to the match against Huddersfield, I went to the match against Hull. So that's 2 of the first 3, I think, or 2 of the first 4. And there's certainly, as I said, I think they're playing great. I think it's great that 𝗬𝗂𝗀𝗃𝗃 is back in the centres, and I think 𝗦𝗣𝗇𝗏𝗀𝗋 is a revelation at fullback. And they should be challenging for silverware, basically, where they showed if they could beat the world champs last week, then they should be expecting to get to Old Trafford. So I know there's some other very good teams stand in their way, but it'd be great to break down that sort of monopoly that only 4 teams have won the titles. It's 1996, so it'd be great for Hull KR to be a 5th, and they're certainly in 2024 they're the team in with the best show of breaking it. So nothing but good things to say.
Yeah, and Steve, finally, Jared Warawara-Hargreaves signing for the Robins in 2025. I mean, obviously at the back end of his career, I think that's probably been a little bit unkind to him, though. If you look at his performances so far and what he's done, I mean, just how big of a statement signing is that for the Robins?
Yeah, huge. He's pretty much an icon for the sport in Australia and New Zealand, and one of those guys who has such a sort of Jekyll and Hyde on and off the field persona, where he's such a polite guy off the field, and he's just an animal on the field, but still most of the time manages to control his aggression. I always say about Jared, is in all my years of being a sideline eye, he's the only guy who, when he was talking to a player at full time, stopped talking to his opponent and pointed at me and said, "You've got to go talk to this guy now." That just has never happened to anyone else. Just a small thing, but it just sticks in my mind and shows, what a great guy he is, and how considerate he is, and how, I guess, deeply he thinks about the game and about his responsibility. So you've signed a real ambassador for the sport, and he'll be a great ambassador for the club.
Steve, I know you know Steve. You know Steve, don't you?
Yeah, he gets where water can't. I've bumped into him in the most incredible of places. I think Workington during the World Cup a few years ago, and then I bumped into him outside Warrington Station during the last World Cup, and he'd seen the day before we bumped into it. I was going to watch Samoa against Tonga, and the day before, I think Jamaica had played New Zealand at the other ground in Hull, and I think England had played somebody, and he'd been to both those games. In fact, he got to the Jamaica-New Zealand game at half-time. His enthusiasm for the game is absolutely incredible, and his knowledge of the game, both in Australia and over here, is equally incredible. And he's a great guy to chat with, and a great guy to know. And I only know him on a very, very flimsy basis. But I'll tell you where else I once saw him. He was at the very first Toronto Wolfpack game. They had a trial game at Brighouse. They played Brighouse Rangers. And the late, great Dave Hadfield was there. And we were talking to each other. And who popped up alongside us but Steve Mascord. He gets everywhere. Good bloke to know, and a good bloke to represent the journalistic side of the game as well.
Yeah, make sure you check out rugbyleague.com. Indeed, you may even be listening to this week's Robin Pod on rugbyleague.com right now. So thank you if you are. Before we speak about St Helens on Saturday, Steve, I've just not had a chance to fit it into the Robin Pod over the last couple of weeks. There's been that much going on at the club. It was a few weeks ago they announced a link up with the Port Moresby Vipers, the 𝗕𝗂𝗋𝗄. 2 of their most promising players joined the Rovers Academy. And potentially it's a life-changing deal, isn't it? Especially for those kids who are going to be coming across from Papua New Guinea. And of course, it gives the Robins the opportunity to bring some talent from Papua New Guinea over to Super League. And then players, if they do progress into the first team, will be quota exempt. So it's it's a very clever, smart move by the Robins. Obviously, it is a big deal, isn't it? The kids will be coming over to play in the academy. You're going to be schooled here. They're going to be housed here. If they don't make it with the Robins, they've still potentially got the opportunity to make a career in rugby league, with another club. An exciting deal all round.
Yeah, April the 12th was the big day. That was when the deal was signed. A lot of the spade work done by John Ockle, who the first Papua New Guinean to play for Rovers back in the day, came over. And both Rob Wilson and Jason Netherton went over to Papua New Guinea to sign the deal. It's massive over there. Rugby league's the main sport, the national sport in Papua New Guinea, and everybody, if you're British and you support rugby league, everybody wants to talk to you. And the commitment that's been given by the powers that be in Papua New Guinea to back this deal up, as well as what Rovers have done, it's never been matched. Nobody else has matched it. And I don't know why other people haven't done this, because there's so much talent over there. And they're going to be 16-year-old lads that come over here. So they're coming over next season to play in the academy. You can bet your bottom dollar that from that club, they're going to get the best 2. They'll sort them out. And so the world's their oyster in terms of playing the game. And I'm certain that they'll take the opportunity and do their very, very best. And for Rovers, we get the chance of picking up maybe somebody useful. And for the kids themselves, they're going to be educated over here. Personal development, integration. You're talking about a couple of lads, whoever they are, the choice hasn't been made yet, but a couple of lads are going to see their lives change by coming over here. And it's got to be good for the game, and it's got to be good for Papua New Guinea and the Vipers and for Rovers.
Yeah, and as the Robins cast their net far and wide, I wonder if this is the start of many more deals like this. So we'll see how it pans out. Of course, it won't bear fruits for a good few years yet, but the wheels are in motion. So let's hope, keep our fingers crossed that it does bear fruits, and in a good few years' time, we're seeing some of these Papua New Guinean players represent the Robins first team, because that's the ultimate goal. Steve, St Helens on Saturday. Basil's watching on YouTube. He's put, looking at social media, it seems Saints are fearing us on Saturday, judging by some of their fan forums. Who would have thought the day would come, Saints fans fearing us? Last season, Steve, we got a big monkey off our back, didn't we? Beating St Helen 26 points to 14. That was the first time we'd beaten them at home since 2015, which is an all too long record. We've got nothing to fear on Saturday, have we?
Not at all. Not at all. I watched Saints and Huddersfield, and I don't know. Well, I do know how Huddersfield didn't beat them. They had a man at fullback who thought he was better than the referee. But until that absolute brain fart by Mr. Connor, I don't think Saints really look like scoring a try. And then, of course, they get the drop goal and the win. So, and the fans are getting on the back of the coach. So there's a little bit of a setback facing Saints, I think, on Saturday. We're on the top of our form. We just played the game like we played against Wigan, nullify them. The things we've got to watch out for. Makinson scored a try from an intercept, and it frightens me when I see Tyrone May throw those looping balls out to the wing. You know, we've got to be careful of that. And also, don't let them wind Mikey up, and I don't think Mikey will get wound up, you know. Keep it steady, keep the method as we did against Wigan, and I foresee us winning fairly comfortable by more than a try and a goal, you know.
Yeah, well, Steve, if anyone's watched the previous two Saints performances, of course, they put points past that lot, but who hasn't this season? But that was still a pretty laboured victory. And then, of course, they got the drop goal victory against Huddersfield. For me, Steve, you know, on the back of the Wigan performance, we've got a Saturday afternoon kickoff. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere. You're going to be there, Steve. I mean, it's got all the trappings, hasn't it? It's got the billing for being a fantastic afternoon of rugby league, and I think these are the kind of games that these players really, really respond to, and they want to be running out at Craven Park, in front of the East Stand, in front of all the Hull Kingston Rovers supporters. It's going to be another sellout. It's going to be a fantastic crowd. St Helens, they've sold out their away allocation, so of course they're looking forward for their trip over to East Yorkshire. This is, for me, this is the game. I can't wait, Steve. I am honestly looking forward to this one. Probably the game I've looked forward to the most this season.
Yeah, and we can look forward to it with confidence as well. How many times do we look forward to games and then think, well, what happens if, you know? I think we can look forward to it with confidence. You know, when I come on the podcast, I always reminisce. Yeah?
Yeah, go on, where are you taking us back to this time, Steve?
I'm going to take you back to 1968, semi-final of the top 16 playoff. We got St Helens at home, and it was a 16,000 crowd at the old Craven Park. I was stood in the East Stand. 20-0 we led at half-time, and it was Tom van Vollenhoven. The older viewers will remember Tom van Vollenhoven. He was one of the great South African rugby union stars who came to St Helens. It was his final game for St Helens, and we led 20-0 at half-time. And that was a remarkable performance. We won eventually 23-10. I'd take that again this weekend.
Yeah, I'd take that as well. I tell you what, Steve, you've led me to a nice point there as well by accident. I hasten to ask, but both teams are averaging 23 points a game at the moment from their 9 Super League fixtures so far. Well, just over 23 points a game. St Helens are on average are conceding just under 8 points a game, and the Robins are conceding just 14 points a game. So we've seen the Saints' defence; it's been miserly all season, hasn't it? But like we talked about in the Wigan game, our attacking prowess and our ability to strike at speed and with skill, you know, I think that goes out the window, Saints' defence. And I do genuinely think that they will be fearing coming to Craven Park. And it may be without Lewis Dodd as well. He's been missing for the last few games for St Helens. It's touch and go whether he's going to be playing on Saturday. Of course, he will add an extra dimension to the attack if he does play. Of course, he's just signed for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, or it's not been officially announced. I mean, they have got star quality in that side, haven't they? But from what I've seen over the last few games, Steve, they look very ordinary at the moment.
Yeah, and you know what? We hit them early. Huddersfield hit them early. I think Leeds hit them early, didn't they? I don't know whether it was the league match or the cup match. If we can hit them early and get a couple of tries in the first 20 minutes, I think we're strong enough to hold them out for the rest of the game, and perhaps add to that. But they do look as though they're lacking a little bit when they first step on the field. You know, I don't know, concentration levels or what. We've got to watch all the players, the usual suspects with St Helens. As I say, they'll go for the intercept. They'll go for that kind of play. No, I don't fear them. I don't fear them at all. And like you, I'm so looking forward to the afternoon.
Yeah, and as we recall this Robin Pod, we don't have the team news as of yet, but it looks like we might be going into this with a clean bill of health, which is so important, isn't it? Especially for continuity. When you're taking on these top sides, you need that continuity in the side.
Keep the same team. You know, I don't like messing about with teams. I don't like this idea of picking a team to play playing other teams' strengths or weaknesses. I think the longer you keep a team together, the longer you keep a team consistent, they're the teams that win. Those sides who can keep a consistent 13, 17, they're the teams that win the competition at the end of the year. And we're, you know, Lee managed it last year, and look how you know, they didn't get many injuries, and they ended up with silverware at our cost, of course. And I think we might just be the team to be doing that this year. And that's credit to the backroom staff at Rovers. Let's not forget the backroom staff. Let's not forget Brett Delaney and people like that, the coaching staff, because they're the ones that are keeping the show on the road, keeping the players happy, and setting the agenda for when they get on the field. And everybody at the club at the moment's absolutely loving it, and long may it continue.
Yeah, another player a player who's definitely missing on Saturday is Alex Walmsley. He's had surgery, so you know, when you look at that middle, you know, the fact that their pack's getting a little bit lighter and ours is getting stronger, you know, I do think it's going to be a really good battle. And I think after 𝗀𝗂𝗄𝗏's performance against Wigan, he's one player that I'm really looking forward to seeing go to toe with that St Helens front line. Yeah,
just keep the confidence there, keep the defence correct, you know, play for each other, look after each other, back each other up, and the way we played against Wigan, they're a good team, but won't it be great? 2 weeks on the trot beating the world champions and the previous world champions. That would be some record, that wouldn't it?
And for me, Steve, that's when people will really sit up and take notice, won't they? That is when people will genuinely consider Rovers to be contenders. Now, you know, we are still early on, you know, and you know, who knows what might happen on Saturday. You know, we're talking confidently. Although I will just give a nod to the Rovers prediction, the Robin Pod Prediction League panel. There's only me and you, Steve, weren't they, who predicted a victory for the Robins against Wigan. Well, I haven't announced people's predictions yet, but they're coming back in their droves to back the Robins. They can't help themselves now.
I look at other podcasts as well, and just listening to a couple of the other podcasts, you're starting to see people from other clubs tipping Rovers more and more, you know, and that's got to be a good sign, hasn't it?
Yeah, of course. And then, just as was mentioned, 𝗀𝗂𝗄𝗏, I've just seen flick up the Man of Steel points after the last round of fixtures, and it probably won't surprise you to see that 𝗀𝗲𝗄𝗏, he picked up 3 points, 𝗀𝗏𝗄𝗏, he picked up 2, and 𝗃𝗃𝗃 picked up 1 point. So it just shows you how important them 3 players was, and how the fact there's no Wigan players receiving points, just how dominant the Robins was on Saturday. Steve, Mikey Lewis, before we finish, it was a welcome return for him against Wigan, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting that all I'm hearing from St Helens fans at the moment is they want Mikey Lewis. They're saying Mikey Lewis, you know, you go on Twitter and everything, Mikey Lewis will be signing for St Helens. They haven't got a hope in hell of signing Mikey Lewis. You know, for a start, he's under contract. He'll be a marquee player. He can ask for whatever he wants at the moment, I would have thought. And I don't think, you know. So they're envious that we've got Mikey Lewis. How many times were we envious of some of the St Helens halfbacks that they've had in the past? You know, but they're envious of us having Mikey Lewis. So wouldn't it be great for him to turn in a 5-star performance? I don't know.
Well, all I'll say on that, Steve, is, and if probably most people who follow, if anyone follows Mikey Lewis on Instagram, they will know he's just bought a brand new house. Bought a new house, and he's currently doing it. And what did concern me, though, Steve, is when I saw one of his videos, and he was knocking down a wall with a sledgehammer in some old Rovers training gear. And I was like, oh, I don't be doing so much work on the house, Mikey. You know, so if there's any builders out there who want to give Mikey a cheap quote to make sure that he can rest up and he don't have to do hard labour, then make sure you get in touch with him, because we want him in prime position, don't we?
We do. And, you know, it's always fingers crossed when they cross the touchline that they're going to come off the pitch okay. And the longer he keeps coming off the pitch okay, the better it is for us. Yeah. Can I just mention, by the way, something Craig Escott came on earlier and sent a message. Can I have a chance to wish Craig all the best? We know what he's going through, or we don't know what he's going through, but we can try and imagine what he's going through. But, you know, like every other Rovers fan, any rugby league person that has a heart, he's doing it tough at the moment, and you know, my heart's with him.
Yeah, and I echo that, Steve, and I'm sure everybody who's watching and listening this week's Robin Pod Weekly will do the same. Huge thanks to you, Steve, for joining me this week. This has been the Robin Pod Weekly, which is powered by Budget Size Auto Centre, the only car specialist trusted by the players, club officials and supporters of Hull Kingston Rovers.